Hey guys, this is Michael Myers 101, and I'm finally back doing a response to the top 5 favorite horror directors tag by Horror Metal, and I was tagged by Sean Urshan for this. I'll put links to both their channels up above and down below in the description. So this is actually a kind of a challenging tag for me since I don't really think as much about the directors behind the camera. So my strategy to answer this tag was really to just take a look through all my horror movies, look for directors who may have directed more than one of my favorites, or directors I feel added a lot to the movie or movies they directed, or maybe gained a lot of respect for their work on these movies. So I decided to turn this into kind of a show and tell. So while I go through the directors, I'll show you some of the movies I have that they directed, and then some posters of some of the ones that I don't have. Remember, though, I'm only counting movies that these directors actually directed themselves, not other movies that they worked on, ones they actually directed. And I'm only judging them on their movies I've actually seen. So I know there's probably some directors that have directed a ton of different horror movies, but if I haven't watched them, I can't really judge them on that. So let's get right into it here. Coming in at 5th place is Steven Spielberg, because of this movie right here, Jaws. It's the top shark movie ever made, considered the first summer blockbuster, has some of the most iconic horror movie music ever. I've heard that Jaws is what cemented Spielberg into the most respected group of directors, and it's really impressive that he was able to have that kind of success with a horror movie. He also directed the Twilight Zone movie, but I haven't seen it, so I'm not factoring that in for this ranking. So coming in at number 4, we have James Cameron. Now, first of all, he directed Terminator, also directed Terminator 2. Now, some people consider Terminator 1 to be more of a horror movie than Terminator 2, but I always thought the T-1000 in Terminator 2 seemed like a monster straight out of a horror movie, the way that it can form its limbs into knives and turn into anyone it touches, so you never know exactly who it is. And James Cameron also directed Aliens, which is another great sequel. And the really impressive thing about all of this is that not only was Cameron able to direct 2 of the most respected sequels ever made, inside or outside of horror, but he was able to direct one as a sequel to his own movie with Terminator 2, and one as a sequel to someone else's movie with Aliens. And he also directed Piranha 2, but I haven't seen it. Coming in at number 3 is going to be Wes Craven, and he directed the entire Scream series 1 through 4, which parodied and reignited the slasher genre with a whole brand new series. Started with the original Scream in 1996, and he also directed the original Nightmare on Elm Street, which started one of the most legendary horror series of all time. And he's also directed a huge variety of other horror movies and thrillers like Red Eye, and many more movies I haven't seen, I've heard a lot about, like The Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes 1 and 2. So coming in 2nd place is James Wan, because of these 2 movies right here, Conjuring 2, and I think I've said before, I think The Conjuring is the best new horror series of this entire millennium, and I think the first Conjuring is one of the scariest movies I've seen. It doesn't use cheap tricks or tons of blood, but it still really makes your skin crawl. Just a lot of really creepy scenes because of the skill of the people that worked on that movie. And Wan's also directed a few other big-name horror movies that I haven't seen, but I've heard mentioned a ton, like Saw, Insidious, and Insidious Chapter 2. And in first place, of course, is John Carpenter, director of my favorite horror movie ever, Halloween 1978. What more can I say about Halloween? It's one of the most successful independent films ever made, credited with starting the slasher genre, started one of the most legendary horror movie series ever, and has some of the most iconic horror movie music in history. And one of the most impressive things about Halloween is that many of the most famous critics agree that even with everything Halloween had going for it in terms of Michael Myers and having ownership of the Halloween holiday, everything else it had, that was John Carpenter's direction, his use of lighting, camera angles, foreground and background, that transformed Halloween from what would have been an average movie into a legendary classic. And there's also John Carpenter's remake of The Thing, which is also considered by many people to be one of the greatest horror movies ever made. And he's also directed more horror movies I haven't seen, like Christine, The Fog, and Village of the Damned. So that's my list of my favorite horror directors. I'm sorry it took so long to make this response. I got extremely busy during the last couple of months, but it's looking like I should have a lot more time to be making videos over the next few months. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later.